In this video, I'm going to teach you all about how to do Facebook advertising for business to business, including how to do advanced business to business targeting techniques that very few people know about. This video is a free preview of a course which you can download in the link in the description. My name is Decker Fraser. I was a vice president of marketing for a Google Accelerator startup. I was a global marketing manager for Sony PlayStation, and I have an MBA from the #1 ranked business school for marketing, Philip Kotler's Kellogg School of Management. Let's get started. Probably the single most important thing that you need to do when you start getting into business-to-business Facebook advertising is deciding what your campaign objective is going to be. And you can see here that Facebook provides 3 different categories of objectives. The first is awareness, the second is consideration, and the third is conversion. We're going to go into the details of these because it is just so incredibly important. I think one of the critical mistakes that people make when they develop any sort of marketing plan is that they go immediately to strategies and methods without knowing where it is they're trying to go, because it's the outcomes that matter more than the means of getting there. And what it is going to enable you to do is pivot based on what those outcomes are. So these objectives are going to be incredibly important. And there are a couple things that I really want you to consider to decide what objective is most appropriate for a given campaign or for an integrated combination of campaigns. First thing I want you to think about with business-to-business campaigns is this research. And the research shows that 95% of business-to-business buyers are not in market for your products. So what this means is that at any given time, generally speaking, only 5% of business-to-business people are actually in that buying mindset of, I'm ready to talk to sales, I'm interested in watching a product demo, I'm ready to engage in a buyer-centric kind of conversation. But if you think about what the majority of business-to-business marketing communications and advertisements look like, it's very much focused on what you might call the bottom of the funnel, catering to people that are in that buying mindset. But what you're missing out on is the 95% of people that are not in market. And then what I would say is that even among the 5% of the people that are in kind of shopping mindset, a lot of business-to-business marketers aren't even really catering to them properly. What they're really catering to is like a tiny sliver of that, people that are at the very, very bottom of the funnel. Because even the people in that 4% that are still near the bottom of the funnel, they still need education, they still need information, they still need to be informed. So that's why what I want you to do is think about this model. So these are 4 different stages of awareness. Now, when we talk about awareness, particularly in business consumer marketing, often what we're talking about is brand awareness. Just are people familiar with your brand or your company or your product? But as much as that is important, and I'm going to talk in detail about that later, what's more important is recognizing that there are different types of awareness or education or levels of knowledge that your prospective buyers are at. And where I see a lot of this advertising fail on Facebook and elsewhere is that you're not actually meeting the prospect at the level of awareness that they're at. So talking about how you have a product discount, for example, is completely irrelevant when they don't even really know what your product does, or they haven't been given enough information. And I think what a lot of business-to-business advertisers do when they start promoting their products on social media is they make completely incorrect assumptions about the degree to which people understand what you're selling. They don't understand it as much as you think they do. Or in some cases, the reverse is also true. They understand it more than you realize, and you're just kind of forcing them through a funnel that they want to bypass. They want to go straight to a sales conversation, for example, with an account executive. So let's talk about what these 4 stages are. And this is a simplification. It's a model you can modify. So the first is problem unaware. So these are people that don't even really recognize that the problem that you solve is worthy of consideration, or that it's a serious enough problem. So the kind of messaging you want to do with a Facebook ad catering to those people would be showing evidence as to why that problem should be taken seriously. And the best way to do that would be with something like taking a leader in their industry and saying they recognized that this was a problem, and by doing so, they were able to become very successful. Just one example. Okay, so people that are aware that they have a problem might not be aware that whatever category you're in is actually the solution to that problem. So the category being like you and your competitors. So in that case, what you need to do is you need to prove to those people that your category is the best solution to that problem, or the most immediate solution, or the easiest solution, or whatever that situation may be. So in that case, your job is actually selling the category, not necessarily selling your brand, not necessarily selling your product, but just persuading them that yes, technology is the answer, or yes, CRMs are the answer, or ERPs, or a professional service that I sell is the answer. This is the best answer to the problem. You need a lawyer to solve this problem. Whatever it is that you're selling in the business-to-business space, they need to be sold at a high level, not at the granular level. Now, if they're already familiar with your category, okay, they're already kind of convinced that this general space is the solution to their problem, then you need to convince them that your unique proposition is the best solution. I am the best lawyer, or we're the best firm to help you because we are experts in this. Or my product is the best answer because we have proven that we generate a higher return on investment than competing solutions, or we're the highest rated, or we're the most utilized. Or if you're selling a non-strategic purchase where differentiation doesn't really matter that much, then what you can say is we're the easiest to work with, we have the most lubricated sales process, we don't require as many guarantees or long-term contracts. So a lot of these kind of tiny tactical things are going to matter when you're selling a product where differentiation doesn't matter that much. It's just about having a smooth engagement. Now, if they're aware of your product, and by aware I don't mean they know you exist or they know your name. What I mean is they understand the value you deliver, they understand why you're different from competitors, they understand the use cases of your product and the various problems that it solves. For those people, then what we're going to focus more on is the direct response gimmicks. We're going to be focusing on more sales-centric types of principles of persuasion. These are things like Dr. Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion. These are things like, take us up on this offer now so that you don't miss out on it later. So those kinds of rational, time-constraining, influential types of messaging in your Facebook ads is going to be effective, provided that they're aware of the problem, they're aware of the category, and they're aware of your product. Okay, but there's no point in bombarding people with Facebook ads that say, hey, buy now and receive these benefits if you haven't really gone through any of these stages whatsoever. Now, the other temptation is to think that we're going to force people through a funnel, and we're going to take them from problem unaware to category unaware to product aware. But the thing is, people are going to be seeing your Facebook ads at various levels of awareness. They're going to be moving at different paces. So don't have too much hubris. Don't assume that you know where everybody is at what stage, because people are going to resist the idea that they're being forced down a funnel they don't want to be in. And a case like that is where somebody wants to have a technical conversation, they want to talk about price, they want to get detailed information from an account executive, but instead you're trying to force them through a funnel that's just too slow. So I talked generally about the different objectives that you have for Facebook campaigns, and I gave you a few things to consider in setting those objectives. So the first thing is, do you think that the people you're targeting are in market or out of market? And chances are, unless you have like a specific list that you purchased or generated using intent data, most people are probably going to be out of market, which means that your objectives are probably going to be more about educating and generating awareness, and we'll talk about later how to transition them into the buying mindset. And the other thing that I gave you was a model for mapping out people's various stages of awareness, and that's going to help you make a decision about what kinds of objectives to set. So the other thing I want you to consider is the Salesforce 3-2-1 strategy. Now, the Salesforce 3-2-1 strategy is basically a way to think about how to do email marketing. But I'm going to generalize it. I'm going to say that the same concept can be applied when you're doing business-to-business Facebook advertising as well. So if we consider how most people approach traditional marketing, they would say, we're going to start at the top of the funnel and focus on cold leads, so people that have very low levels of awareness. And then we're going to focus on people that are a bit warm, maybe they're somewhat familiar, and then we're going to focus on the hot people, so the people that are ready to buy now. What the Salesforce 3-2-1 strategy does is it completely flips the funnel on its head and says, your number one priority is to focus on the hot leads, so the people that are ready to buy now. These are your low-hanging fruit. Your number two priority is the warm leads, people that are somewhat familiar but aren't ready to buy now. And then you focus on the cold people, which are probably not going to buy for another year or so. Now, this isn't universal, but I would say, particularly if you're in a small company, that you should probably focus on the bottom of the funnel first, if this is the type of funnel that you're working in, because this is where you're going to get the immediate sales. This is where the low-hanging fruit is. That's where you're able to generate serious financial impact in the short term. Now, if you're working in a large company, I would say there's often too much of a focus on those hot leads, too much of a focus on the short term. What you should probably be doing is spending more time on these cold leads by hitting them with the kinds of advertising that is more focused on brand building and generating broad awareness, thought leadership, that sort of stuff, because that's where you're dealing with longer time horizons. But regardless of which end of the funnel you're focusing on the most, or which audience group that you're catering to the most, I would say that it's easiest to start at the bottom of the funnel, even though a lot of marketers don't. So what I would first try to do is figure out how to sell the product, like the specific use cases, the compelling value proposition, the positioning of the product, and I would start by building Facebook ads to sell the product. And then I would work my way up the funnel and think about, okay, now that I know how to sell the product and how to get people actually talking to salespeople, let's think about how I get them to that stage. And that's going to be by doing things in the warm stage of the funnel, which is going to be more centered around things like maybe case studies or webinars. And then I would think about content to hit the cold people, which is going to be more, how do I generate broad awareness? How do I generate thought leadership pieces and this sort of thing? So even though in execution you might be launching all of these different types of Facebook ads simultaneously, I would say that generally speaking, it's easier to start with kind of how do I sell to hot leads, and then work your way up and think about the broader types of marketing you can take. Now, when you're actually designing things like retargeting funnels and stuff, the sequence might look like it goes from cold to warm to hot, but I would say when you're actually coming up with what those specific ads are, I would do the reverse. I would start with the bottom of the funnel content, and then if you have time, you start thinking about what the thought leadership is going to look like. Okay, so from a business-to-business perspective, I would say that there are 4 objectives for campaigns that you're probably going to focus on the most. Now, I don't know your nuanced situation. Maybe you're in business-to-business e-commerce, which is a growing field right now, in which case, yes, you're going to be focused on conversions, things like catalog sales. But I would say that in general, these are the ones that are probably going to be most applicable to you. Okay? Now, if your main offering is a mobile app, then sure, app installs is going to be a meaningful proposition for you. But the reality is that a lot of business-to-business applications are not being sold on Apple's App Store or Google Play. They're being sold on things like Salesforce App Exchange. So it's going to be much harder to market something like that using the app installs objective here in Facebook. So the ones that are going to be very important for most people is, number one, is lead generation. So you're going to be using the lead generation objective to get people to actually talk to your salespeople, to request price quotes, to request free consultations, to request demos, to sign up for free trials, these types of things. So I don't care if you're selling a business-to-business service, you're selling a SaaS product, you're selling some sort of industrial equipment. Lead generation is probably the first objective that you're going to want to start because of what I told you earlier, which is that we kind of want to focus at the bottom of the funnel first. Let's figure out how we're going to actually get people to have conversations with sales, and then later, if we have the resources, we can think about how to scale that up to hit people that are not ready to talk to sales. Now, I've had a lot of success here with this style of lead generation objective. The only problem is it's less scalable, right? There are only so many people. If we use kind of that general rule of thumb, it might only be 5% of the people that are ready to take us up on this kind of offer. So we still need something to hit the other 95%. And what those are is going to be some of these other objectives that are very important. So one is video views. I think video views are one of the most effective ways to hit people at the levels of awareness where they need to be educated more. And it's also the easiest way to see if people are actually consuming the content. So one of the challenges when you go with something like cost per impression, which is like an awareness type of metric, you don't know if they're actually paying attention. You don't know if you're raising their level of awareness or are they just being exposed to your logo. But when you use something like video views, you can be like, okay, they actually watched 90% of my case study or my testimonial, or they watched my product demo halfway through. That person's pretty informed. And you can make some pretty educated guesses based on their engagement in a video, whether they're going to be receptive to a follow-up advertisement or a follow-up email or something that is going to push them further down into a sales conversation. Okay, so traffic is similar, right? If somebody goes to a blog post that has extensive detail about the use cases of your product, they're probably ready to see a video demo of your product, if not, perhaps a one-on-one demo of your product. Or if they go to a blog post on your website that is talking about a critical problem that you're in a unique position to solve as a professional service provider, they're probably going to be receptive to a free consultation. That's something to think about. Now, the other one that does not get enough attention in business to business is brand awareness. Now, what we know is that when companies get big enough, business to business companies, they generally get there by focusing on demand generation. Okay, short-term sales activation is the term that a lot of researchers use. And there's heavy emphasis on basically marketing as a sales support function. But there's kind of this inflection point after maybe $5-10 million in annual revenue where companies need to really focus more on building a brand. Because long term, there's tons of data to show that building business-to-business brand awareness and fame so that your brand immediately comes to mind when that buying situation arises. And keep in mind, for 95% of business-to-business buyers, that buying situation is not right now. It's going to be in the future. You want them to think about your brand when that future buying event happens. So one of the ways that you do that is with brand awareness. Now, with brand awareness, maybe you're not spending aggressively, right? Maybe it's just you're hitting people with a message of a frequency of once per week. Okay, maybe they're exposed to your logo and what you do once per week for 52 weeks, and then maybe next year or after 6 months, when the need arises for whatever you're selling, maybe they need a lawyer, maybe they need a business consultant, maybe they need some ERP software, you might be more strongly considered because you had run a brand awareness campaign. The problem is that there's a stigma against the style of advertising in the business-to-business space, and it's because it's not as quantifiable in the short term, in the under 6 months range. But we know that long term, in terms of economies of scale and overall efficiency, that's something that you need to do when you're doing an integrated campaign. Okay, so let's go next into a little bit of details about what each of these objectives is, and then you can decide for yourself which one is appropriate to start with. Let's go into a little bit more detail on what each of these objectives means. Brand awareness basically means, are people going to remember your advertisement? And that is one of the most important things when your objective is catering to people that are going to buy in 6 months in particular, because they need to remember your brand so that it is salient when the buying event happens, when there's a circumstance that would instigate them to buy in your category. This is grossly undervalued, particularly in the business-to-business world. There's a heavy bias towards direct response marketing. The biggest problem I see with direct response marketing is there is way too much small thinking, because when you're trying to get a lot of scale out of your business-to-business marketing, you don't want to limit your marketing to the number of people that are willing to submit their email to get access to something like a white paper. Instead, what you want to do is you want to hit your total addressable market. And your total addressable market is including people that are not willing to buy right now and perhaps not willing to provide information to go through some sort of gated content. So one way that you can target those group of people is with awareness and optimize your budget to maximize things like ad recall, so you're not overspending on things like capturing contact information through gated content. So awareness, pay more attention to it than you probably do. Reach is an interesting one. So this is where you're focused on reaching as many people as you can within set parameters and increasing the frequency, so how often they see your message. Traffic is driving people not just to your website, such as your landing page, your homepage, but also to content. So for example, a strategy I recommend with Facebook ads is don't just send people to a white paper or to a buyer's guide that is gated on a landing page. Instead, what I would do is just take all of the content that you would have had in a PDF, put it on your website in the form of a blog post or an educational landing page, and use that as the place that you drive traffic to. All right, some other things to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily have to send people to your website. You could send them to an app. You could send them to a phone call. So particularly if you're selling to like micro businesses where you want to get them on the phone immediately, you could send them there. You can also send them to a messenger conversation. So there's a lot of these kind of chatbot style methods you can use to do things when you're dealing with SMBs at scale. So for example, with travel agencies or booking certain things. Engagement, another useful objective to drive things like getting likes, driving event attendance. So let's say you're launching an event like a webinar, or maybe it's a trade show, something like that. You want to get a lot of comments. This can be useful. I like to use something like this in a broad approach initially to try to get a lot of comments, a lot of likes, a lot of social proof, and then kind of wind it down and narrow the audience later after you've kind of gotten a lot of engagement with the post. So effective if you have a strategy that's more focused on like word of mouth, and using influencers combined with Facebook advertising can be extremely effective here. App installs are going to be useful if your mobile app's important. So for example, let's say you're selling to construction workers who are on site or contractors that move around a lot and need quick access to things, then driving app installs can be very useful, as long as you have some sort of follow-up nurturing sequence to make sure that they're actually engaging with the app after they've installed it. Video views, I'm a huge advocate of video. I think it's one of the best ways not only to raise your awareness, but also to actually ensure that people are becoming more educated, so that they're moving through the stages of awareness and being convinced that you're able to solve the problem that they have and that that is a problem they need to pay attention to. Lead generation, once again, this is where I recommend that most of you start because it's the low-hanging fruit. And it's easier to build a marketing campaign once you first know how to sell the product, and then later you can start selling the category and selling the problem itself. So here, the general use case is going to be form submission. So people requesting like a consultation, for example, but you could also have different types of lead generation. So it could be something like a phone call or engagement through a messenger conversation. Conversions is an objective that I think makes sense if you have like an e-commerce store in the consumer marketing space. I think conversions is overutilized in business-to-business marketing. I'm not saying you can't do it, and there are cases where you probably have to do it, but I would steer much more strongly towards lead generation. And here's why. What a lot of people will do with their Facebook ads is they will send people to their homepage or their landing page. The problem is that your website is not going to convert at nearly the same rate that a lead generation form is. Now, other business-to-business marketers are going to object with me, and they're going to say, okay, yeah, we get it. The Facebook form converts at a higher rate than my website or landing page, but the people converting on the landing page, they're more informed, they're more engaged, they're more buyer ready, so those are the people we actually want to send to the salesperson. Okay, I agree with you. The people that are going to convert on your homepage instead of on the lead generation form, so in other words, when you're using the conversions objective, you're going to get higher quality leads. The problem is that you're going to get way fewer leads. So the absolute number of highly qualified leads is going to be higher using the lead generation objective in most cases than using the conversions metric, even though the percentage of high quality leads is going to be higher with the conversion method. So this is my overall problem with business to business marketing. The approach that a lot of people take that's wrong is they're way too focused on the things that are measured, and they're ignoring the huge missed opportunities that are happening because, for example, they decided to gate a white paper, so they don't even see the hundreds of people that would have read your white paper if it weren't gated. So way too much I think it's availability bias. It's focusing on the things that are right there rather than the missed opportunities. So that's just one reason why I think the lead generation objective is generally superior to the conversions objective. The other reason I don't really like the conversions metric is because often people are driving people to just gated content in general. So like a landing page for white paper. And I'm like, all right, you generated a lead. Somebody submitted their email to get access to your white paper. I don't care. What I rather would have done was have a traffic objective to send people to an ungated blog post or straight to the PDF link with no gating, so that I would have 1,000 people reading and distributing that PDF instead of 2 people that decided to convert on a landing page. Okay? I want you to focus on big impact, which is one of the biggest advantages we have with Facebook ads, is we can reach a lot of people in the total addressable market. Okay, you can't do that with Twitter ads. Twitter ads is too small. The database is too tiny, unless you're targeting journalists or something like that. With Facebook, we can go big or we can go home, and we can do it cost effectively. So we're aiming for scale here. We're not just aiming for a few downloads here and there. Okay, so conversions are going to be actions on your website. That's the most obvious use case. That's where a lot of business-to-business people over-focus, generally speaking. But you can also drive actions through the Messenger conversation app, through WhatsApp itself. So particularly important if you're going to be marketing in certain regions, like Indonesia, for example. WhatsApp is going to be the default Messenger application, or your app. Now, catalog sales is an objective that for most business-to-business people, perhaps not as relevant. If you're doing business-to-business e-commerce, sure, and I think that's a hot market to be in. So you are going to want to explore that in more depth to give people a catalog of opportunities for products to purchase. And store traffic, which would be driving people to physical stores, perhaps applicable if you actually want to get people into in-person consultations or something like that in the B2B space. For most of you, the single easiest place to start with Facebook advertising to be able to prove that you can generate results, particularly short-term results, is by using the lead generation objective, which I'm going to walk you through right now. So when you start creating a campaign using the lead generation objective, you're going to be given these 3 options: instant forms, automated chat, and calls. Now, the easiest thing to get started with is the instant forms. And I'm just showing you an example of a campaign that I worked on, which was this. And it was integrate Amazon and QuickBooks. So this is a very clear use case, a very clear benefit value proposition of being able to integrate two systems that are separate. You can use that using the tool Webgility. And the call to action here is book a demo. So basically what happens when people click this ad is there is a pop-up form where maybe they're asked for their name and their email to request a demo. An extremely effective way to do bottom of funnel lead generation. And I'm going to show you a few examples later of campaigns that I ran like this. Now, one of the single most important things to do this well is the targeting. And this is something that is a bit of a challenge with Facebook, but also a big opportunity. So the thing with Facebook is that it has a huge user base, right? You're talking the biggest, most popular social media in the world. And even though other platforms are getting very popular, Facebook is still the Goliath in the space. So you're able to get a much bigger reach than you can with other channels. But the native targeting opportunities in business to business are not as good as you're going to get in LinkedIn. So I can go to LinkedIn and I can say, I want people with this exact job title, this seniority, these types of industries. There's so many parameters I can put in there. And even by putting in all these parameters, I can still get a large user base. Can't really do that with Facebook, right? People are not going to be as up to date on their professional information. So for example, I was targeting veterinarians on Facebook, and I was also targeting them on LinkedIn. I was able to get about 10 times as many people on LinkedIn as Facebook. But I don't want this to deter you. And the reason is because you don't have to rely on the native targeting. Now, the native targeting is going to look something like this, right? You can put in Thailand as a location, you can put in age, genders, and then the more detailed targeting, which is interests and behavior. So you can see who's interested in software as a service, who's interested in technology, in industrial marketing, whatever you want to put in there. But one of the key ways you overcome this limitation of Facebook relative to LinkedIn is with the custom audiences here. So you can actually import lists. So you could import, for example, your current customers and target them. You could target people that look similar to your current customers. You could go into LinkedIn. What you could do is you could buy a premium subscription to LinkedIn to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You could identify all the target customers that you want in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Then you could use this other tool called scrap.io, which will scrape as many emails as possible from those people on LinkedIn. You could take that CSV file and import it here into Facebook, and then advertise to the same people that you're able to find on LinkedIn using Facebook. The other thing that you could do is you could run a top-of-funnel campaign on LinkedIn, targeting the exact people you want. All right, maybe it's chief technology officers at companies with 50 or more people. Send them to a blog post on your homepage, but then you could retarget them using Facebook to get them to watch a video and then to request a demo. So there's ways you can use LinkedIn and Facebook together to get the targeting right, but also get all the benefits of Facebook, like cheap cost per click and things like that. They can work together. But you don't even need to use LinkedIn at all. So for example, you could get a list somewhere else, right? You could go buy a list. You could compile a list of target buyers. You could scrape it from association websites where people's emails are publicly listed. There's all different ways. Now, one of the challenges when you import a list into Facebook is the match rate. So sometimes the match rate can be extremely high, like 75%, 90%, etc. Other times it may not be so hot. I mean, it may only be 40%, right? So less than half of the people that you thought you could hit, you're actually going to be able to hit because, not everybody's on Facebook and they're not always able to connect the email that you have, which may be a professional email or a personal email, with the Facebook account. But tons of people are using Facebook for professional purposes. And one of those main professional purposes is the groups. People engage a lot in Facebook groups. They don't really engage much on LinkedIn groups. So it's a huge opportunity for you to hit people where they're often in a buying or a business type of mindset. Facebook advertising has some huge advantages over other channels. And one of those is, for example, how cheap it is to get somebody to watch your video ads. So I've run campaigns where it only cost 1 cent to get somebody to watch a video. And that's a very cost-effective way of doing brand awareness marketing, product awareness marketing as sort of your air cover initially before you start doing the more aggressive spear phishing when it comes to lead generation or getting people into sales conversations. But the challenge with Facebook, as I've mentioned before, is that the targeting has limitations. And I mentioned in one instance where I was only able to target about 1/10 of the number of veterinarians that I could through LinkedIn advertising. So the key to success with business-to-business advertising on Facebook is really getting good at the targeting. And there is one way that you can enhance the targeting, and it is by using this tool called Lead Enforce. Now, full disclosure, I am an affiliate of this product, and I will be having a link at the end of this course to offer you an affiliate discount. But you can take that with a grain of salt and do a free trial of this if you want to try it out. But only use it if it's going to be effective for what your purposes are. So I'm just going to explain how Lead Enforce allows you to achieve targeting that you can't normally by default within Facebook. So if my memory serves me correctly, you used to be able to target specific groups when you did Facebook advertising. You can no longer do that. But you can do it when you use something like Lead Enforce. So I just want to explain some of the limitations that I've run into with Facebook ads. So one issue is that I often get virtual assistants to compile lists for me. And the way that I do that is I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So I get a virtual assistant to go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator and start compiling a list of people that I want to target. So individuals with specific job titles, or maybe they're just associated with certain keywords, and then you build a list. But one of the problems you run into is that it can be very time consuming to generate those lists. So I believe there's only 100 pages that can be populated. There's a limit to how many people can be in the list, and then there's kind of a macro limit. I still think it's worth it, but it takes time. Now, one way to overcome this issue of time, to be able to speed things up, is to use something like Lead Enforce. So, for example, let's say that it takes maybe 10 hours of a virtual assistant's time to compile a list of around 2,500 people, and then you import that into Facebook ads. The match rate, let's say that's 50%, maybe 90% on the high end. So really, you're going to get a list of maybe 1,500 people based on 10 hours of work. But instead, what you could do is you go into Lead Enforce, and what you could do is you can simply target a group that already has 6,000 members on Facebook, and you do that almost instantaneously. Just within a few minutes, you're able to target those people versus compiling your own list, which could take hours and hours. So it's one easy way to overcome the limitations of Facebook targeting. So the first use case that I explained here is that it allows you to target people that are members of groups, or for example, people that belong to a group for co-working, for example, co-working space groups. It also allows you to do Facebook professional targeting. So here you're able to do Facebook targeting that looks a little more similar to what you can achieve with LinkedIn. And the other thing that you could do is you could target based on competitors. So perhaps you want to target your competitors' customers to get them to switch to your product because you know that your product is able to overcome the deficiencies in the competing products. And you could have a specific campaign where the messaging caters to the deficiencies in that competing product. Another thing that is effective when you're using Lead Enforce is to be able to target the followers of influencers. So I frequently mention that Sparktoro is an excellent tool for finding people that are influencers. So I'm just going to put the keyword in here as co-working. And then what you could do is discover the people that influence those that are interested in this keyword. You could put anything in here. You could put people that are product managers, you could put people that are veterinarians, whatever it is. And then what you're going to be able to do is identify the brands, the organizations, and the individuals, such as this Alex person, that are influencers. And then what you could do is you could go to Facebook, find out what their account is, and then you could target all the people that follow people like Alex Thrillman. And I could just click this link as well to find that Facebook page. What I'm going to do now is walk you through how to do the advanced targeting within Lead Enforce. So here I am in the logged in experience. What I'm going to do is go to Audiences and Sources. And then I'm going to hit Create New. And I could call the source name whatever I want. So I'm just going to call this one Gary. And I'm going to choose Facebook. So analyze Facebook group pages, posts, and profiles. Hit Save. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically create a custom audience based on people that follow this influencer. So the influencer in this case is Gary Vaynerchuk. So I've gone to Gary's Facebook page here. And I'm going to copy the URL for his page, and I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to hit Add. So this is a very efficient, fast way of targeting the people that follow Gary Vaynerchuk. I'll hit Close. And now we can see here, there are 3.5 million users that I can start targeting because of the capabilities within Lead Enforce. So what you're going to do when you have this audience that you want to target is you're going to hit Share. And then you're going to hit Create New Audience, and you can call it something. So I'm going to call this Gary Followers. I can give it a description, people who follow Gary V. And then what you do is you select your ad account, or perhaps if you're a consultant, you can put your client's ad account. You need to make sure that you add the Facebook ad account so that it's syncing with Lead Enforce. You accept the terms, and then you'd hit Save. And what you're going to do is make sure that you add the account before you come in and hit Save. So there's two calls to action here. The Save is actually going to export this list, the followers, into the Facebook account, and whereas this call to action is just going to sync your Facebook ad account with Lead Enforce. So what's going to happen when you hit Save and you hit that green button is you're going to get a new audience, a new custom audience in Facebook. So to see where that would show up, you just click these three bars here within the Facebook advertising account, go to Audiences, and then you'll see it here. So this is an example where I imported this targeted list here. And sometimes Facebook is not going to give you the estimated audience size, but what you can do is when you look at the performance and the delivery, you're going to be able to see what the daily estimated reach is. So that's going to give you some idea of how large the audience is. You can also look within Lead Enforce itself to see how many users are there to get a size estimate. So the first use case I walked you through there was targeting people that follow a particular influencer. That's a very efficient way to do it. You don't have to contact the influencer. You don't have to pay the influencer. You don't have to do any sort of a dark marketing with that. You can just use Lead Enforce to do it very, very fast. Now, the second use case I want to explain is targeting people that are members of groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new source here. And what we're going to do is target a group. So something I've been working on lately is targeting co-working spaces. So let's take a look here at groups that belong to co-working. Okay, so this one only has 97 members, which is not a very significant size. So we're seeing this one here, co-working 2.1 thousand. So let's try this one. And what we're going to do is just copy the URL for the Facebook page, or Facebook group, excuse me. We're going to hit Add. So it's pretty much the exact same process that you follow when you're deciding to target an influencer's followers, only in this case, you're just targeting followers of a particular group. And then you would hit this and share. You would accept the terms, name it. So I'm going to call this co-working group members. I'm going to select the add account. And then I can hit save, and it'll show up once again in the audience section of Facebook advertising. A third use case here would be to target people that follow a competitor. So for example, let's say that you have a live chat plugin, maybe it's something like Intercom, and you want to convince people to switch to your product. So I just typed in here Snap Engage, and what I could easily do is just go to the Snap Engage page, and then what I would do is copy the URL for the Snap Engage page and then import it into Lead Enforce the same way that I did with the influencer and the same way that I did with the Facebook group. So it's really quite advanced. You can target based on basically any URL that you can find in Facebook. So for example, you could go into an individual post and target the people that are interacting with that post. So this is how you're able to use Lead Enforce to target people based on URLs within Facebook. But one of the most powerful use cases is being able to extract data from LinkedIn and then export that to Facebook. So let's see how to do that. So what I would do is create new, and then I'm going to call this LinkedIn targeting for Facebook. And then I'm going to select the source as LinkedIn this time, not Facebook. And I hit save. Now, here's where you're able to take the best of both worlds. The tremendous power of up-to-date targeting with LinkedIn combined with the very cost-effective and efficient advertising within Facebook. So, for example, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to search for the position veterinarian. Okay, so veterinarian as the job title. I'll hit search. And then what I'll do is hit search here. And now you can see I have a list of veterinarians that is going to be much more advanced than what Facebook is able to provide natively. And then what I'll do is I'll share that list and create it, LinkedIn targeting job position within the audiences in Facebook. You'd hit accept the terms, you would select the add account and then hit save, and it'll turn into an audience. The other key use case here is to target audiences based on the Instagram accounts. So for example, going after influencers and being able to target the influencer's audience without actually needing to pay or interact with the influencer. Sometimes influencers don't respond to email outreach, so you can just go into Lead Enforce and start targeting, which is extremely efficient. I want to go into a bit more detail about the lead generation forms because it's probably the single easiest way for most of you to get started with high-performing Facebook ads to hit those bottom of funnel people that are ready to request conversations with your sales team. So here I am in an example campaign, and then I'm within the ad set, and now I'm looking at the specific ads. So you can see the navigation here at the top. I'm going to go down here and see the company's logos, etc. And here we are at the instant forms. So I am going to create a form. I can name the form whatever I want. I can add a little intro. I can add a headline. Free accounting consultation. Takeaway 1. Takeaway 2. And if you really want to have high conversion rates, you need to focus on the benefits of the offer itself. And the offer in this case is the free consultation. And then what you might have is some qualifying entry fields. So it could, for example, be information about their work, their job title. I don't recommend forcing people to provide work email and work phone number because often when they're exploring on their phone or just browsing at home at night, they may not want to associate their work email. The other challenge is that you're alienating tons of people when you force them to use work emails. So one of the most influential groups of people out there are independent consultants, who are often senior level people who were executives but have now gone independent. They're going to be using Gmail, they're going to be using Yahoo a lot of the time. So I don't recommend using these, but you could put in something like job title, company name if you wanted to. Keep in mind that the more information you ask for, the more you're going to hurt the conversion rate. So it's up to you, depending on how busy your account executives are, your salespeople are. Do you really, if you're lacking in leads in demo requests or consultation requests, then put in as little requirements as possible. If the problem is that they're wasting their time with too many bad leads, then you probably want somebody more qualified, and you can put in more fields. From my experience, one of the easiest ways to enhance performance of these lead forms is to deal with what happens after they submit it. So you could put in something like schedule your call now, and then you might put in something like calendly.com/Joe accountant, something like that. So when you create a lead gen form, you actually get kind of two calls to action. The first is them filling out the form. And then when they fill out the form, they get another call to action. So for example, this one is visit website, or it could be schedule demo, or it could be learn more. So you have the opportunity to nurture the lead after it's been created. And I think this is one of the critical mistakes that happens in business-to-business marketing, is not enough nurturing. It's just kind of, let's just get people to take an action, and then our job is done. You need to continue to market to people after they've submitted a form. So the easiest way to do that is just to have a button that kind of sends them where they can learn more information, or it could be watch video, and then you go to youtube.com/thought leadership video. You continue to sell to them, because especially in business to business, they're probably going to evaluate at least maybe two other solutions. So there's no reason that you can just stop trying to sell yourself, and there's no reason that marketers should say that their job is finished once the MQL is created. You need to nurture them so that they do actually end up having a conversation with the sales team, and when they do have the conversation, they're more informed. Now, the other challenge with lead gen forms, and this is the same with LinkedIn, is that you need to download them by default. And as far as I know, Facebook still only keeps the leads in their system for about 3 months. So make sure that you download them, or do the alternative, which is much better, an integration with your CRM. So for example, you could integrate the lead gen forms with Aweber, ActiveCampaign for your follow-up nurture email sequence. So that's also best practices. One thing is to, once people submit the form, direct them to a page or a video to learn more. But the other thing you want to do is put them into a nurturing sequence. And you can automate that through a program like ActiveCampaign. And you can see there's tons and tons of integrations that Facebook provides natively. So how do you actually integrate the CRM with Facebook lead capture forms? Well, you go to business.facebook.com to go to your business account. I'm in this area called the Publishing Tools, and down at the bottom there is a selection called Lead Setup. And here you can search for your CRM, for example, HubSpot, and then you would connect from website to integrate into HubSpot. Now, there are going to be situations where what you may want to do is integrate the form submission into your actual application. So maybe you have like a free trial in your app. So there may not be a native integration that's available for you. In cases like that, what you may need to do is build a connection to Zapier and then do a Zapier integration with Facebook forms. The other thing I want to point out is that traditionally you would manage the leads in this area, in the business Facebook section, but they've actually created essentially their own little mini CRM within Facebook, and that is the Lead Center, which I'm going to bring up right now. And now I'm in the Lead Center. You can see here that there are 2 leads that have come in. I have emails for people And what I can do here is I can download the leads by clicking this as a CSV and manually import those into the CRM. Now, what I recommend is if you are small and agile, or perhaps new to Facebook, what I would do is I would start by doing this manually. I would not worry about the integration. I would just have a proof of concept that yes, Facebook lead gen forms are effective at generating decent quality leads or people requesting demos, consultations. Do it manually, perhaps have somebody that's an associate do the manual labor. And then what I would do is I would transition to a full integration to scale up and automate the process. I'm going to walk you through how to create a very streamlined lead submission form in Facebook. So where you would do this is you would actually go to your Facebook page, not the ad manager, and then go to Publishing Tools. Within Publishing Tools, you want to hit these 3 bars here that says More Tools. And we're going to go to the instant forms. So these are the lead capture forms that are native to Facebook. You can see here that I have 2 different forms. The more advanced form is this one. So we have a little preview of what the form looks like, and I just want to explain the logic behind this. So typically when people create a lead gen form like this, they might say free demo or free consultation. What I'm doing with the copywriting here is I'm saying you're getting a free demo for co-working space managers. So because I'm explicitly targeting these people, I'm saying that this is something that's been somewhat customized or personalized to you. This is not just some generic thing. And because it seems more special, people are more likely to convert and actually follow through with submitting the form. And I say here, our CEO will personally show you how to automate your co-working management. So the other thing that I'm doing here is I'm selling the offer. I'm talking about the benefits of the offer, which is the demo. And the benefit here is that you're going to learn how to automate. And that's one of the critical things to direct response marketing is talk about the benefits of the free trial, the free demo, the free consultation, rather than just talking about the benefits of the product itself. So this is the first stage that the prospect will see on Facebook. And we'll see what the second stage is here. So I've selected the option for getting high volume. So what Facebook will do is when you say that you want high volume, they're going to go with a very minimalist form. And here it's just asking for email and full name, but you could customize this. You could ask for phone number or something like that. I don't recommend that because I think to some extent phone numbers are a bit archaic with people using Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. So I wouldn't force people to provide a phone number. If you do want to get more qualified leads, I would probably ask for different information, perhaps some company details or some idea of what they're looking for in a product. And then they're brought to the terms and conditions and the privacy, etc. At this point, they're actually going to submit the form. And if you've integrated this with your CRM, that information will get populated into Salesforce or Copper or whatever system that you're using. Now, the part that a lot of people miss is the next stage. So this is your opportunity to drive a second call to action. This is one of the biggest benefits of lead generation campaigns within social media advertisements, is not only do you capture their information, but after you capture it, you can drive them to a second step. So one of the biggest issues that I see with lead generation campaigns is people will request demos, request consultations, but then they never actually end up showing up to the meeting with the salesperson or with the consultant. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling people that they can schedule their 15-minute co-working automation demo by clicking this blue button here. And what that blue button is going to do is it's actually going to go to a calendar. Now, in this case, it's going to a calendar in Copper. In your case, that could be a HubSpot scheduler, it could be Calendly, it could be any one of those scheduling automation programs. And I'm saying, please click the blue button to book time with our CEO to walk you through how to automate your co-working space management. Again, I'm not just using generic lingo. I'm not just saying schedule your demo. I'm adding some details here. It's that you're actually going to get to have a one-on-one conversation with the CEO who's going to walk you through the benefit of automating your co-working space management. So it's not just appealing to everyone, it's appealing specifically to you. And then when they click this, they're going to be brought to the scheduler. So what this is going to do is it's going to help streamline the transition from an MQL, marketing qualified lead, somebody requesting a demo, to an SQL, which is an actual meaningful conversation with the salesperson. Now, for most of you, this is what you're likely going to want to do. However, in some cases, what you may want to do instead is just drive people to your website or to an industry-specific landing page, and that's fine. You could change this call to action to say, maybe watch this video or check out this page or whatever you want to do. But assuming that this is what you're doing, it's going to be very important to have a smooth transition to the sales team when they follow up with this prospect. And a big mistake that I often see is that when people follow up, they'll say something like, "Hi, I'm from X company. Do you have time, in the next few days for your demo or your consultation or whatever?" Now, the problem is that when you're doing outbound advertising through something like Facebook, the level of familiarity and the memory of the prospects is actually very, very low. So they are not going to remember your brand name. So reminding them what company you're from is probably not going to resonate with them. And in a lot of cases, they don't actually even remember filling out the form, believe it or not. This happens time and time again. I've consulted for tons of companies. So what you need to do is in the follow-up email is you need to remind them about why you're reaching out. So, hey, we saw that you requested an automation, a co-working automation demo on Facebook. I'm reaching out to see if you're still interested. If you ask a question like that, you're more likely to actually get a reply. And then what I would do is I would give them the option to schedule, because people filling out this particular scheduler is probably only going to be, maybe 30%, hopefully 50% of people will actually do it. But then when you get them, encourage them to do it in the follow-up email, the overall percentage of people that are going to become SQLs will be much higher. The other thing in that email is focus on the benefits, the value proposition. Don't focus on your brand name, because what people are doing is they're trying to extract value. So you need to have some empathy and focus on the value rather than focus on your brand name. Now, if you have a very established brand name and you've done a lot of brand awareness marketing, which you can do through advertising on Facebook, that's great. You can talk about your brand name, if you represent Zoom or Microsoft. But chances are, if you're working at like a small or mid-sized company, people aren't going to know who you are. So you need to remind them of what it is that you actually do.
Now, best practice when you get somebody requesting a demo, consultation, etc., is to immediately put them into some sort of automated nurturing flow. So here we have an example from Active Campaign, which will allow you to automate this type of thing. So for example, here we have a welcome email. There's a delay of 2 days, and then there's a features tutorial, perhaps to drive people back into your product if it's a software product, or if it's not a software product, maybe just a reminder of how to use the physical product, or a reminder of the advantages of hiring your services. Another delay of 2 days, and a case study. So there's different nurturing flows you can follow here. You can also create a automation if you have a paid version of MailChimp. So you go into automations here, and you could create a customer journey and then have a sequence that's similar to what we see here in Active Campaign.
I think one of the most underutilized capabilities in digital marketing for business to business is the ability to have live, real-world conversations with prospects. I think the problem is that a lot of salespeople compel prospects to get on the phone, to book a meeting, and all of that just slows down the process. So for example, I remember requesting a demo, and I was in Asia. This is for enterprise software. And it took basically 3 days for the account executive to get back to me because of the time zone differences, because of the weekend. And then the response was basically just, hey, when are you available? So then I have to respond with my availability, and then we have to find an availability slot that is the same. And then finally we were able to have a conversation, but a week after I was ready to see the demo of the product. So that you could see that process is extremely slow and tedious.
Now, there are a few ways to automate that. One is when people request a demo, you automatically send them to schedule it using something like a Calendly link or a booking link in HubSpot. But another way is just to bypass that whole booking process, multiple systems. If you can get somebody in the platform they're already on, Facebook, which is one of the ones they engage with the most in Messenger, and you have them, why transition them to Zoom call? Why transition them to a phone call? It's not necessary. They're there. They're available to ask questions. You can address their objections, and you can do it right within Facebook. And one of the best ways to get those conversations started is using the messages as the objective. Now, the problem is that a lot of sales organizations are just being run very old school. Now, we're seeing this transformation happen. So, for example, one of the thought leaders in tech marketing has mentioned that he was able to get a deal with, I believe it was one of the foremost entrepreneurs in the world, Mark Cuban. And he was able to get everything sold just through back and forth texting. So there's not necessarily a need to have a live conversation, a face-to-face conversation. This is where the world is going. Even collections agencies, for example, are already moving to text-based collections and email-based collections because nobody wants to get on the phone anymore, especially not the younger generations that are moving into these management positions. So how do we do this? Well, we go in to create a campaign. And once again, there's a reason I started this course with objectives, because that's the most important thing. We're going to set objectives as messages. Now, this is one of the single fastest ways to get sales qualified leads, to get meaningful conversation started, is just bypass all the nonsense, go straight to the conversation. And you can set up a campaign that's designed to drive conversations with your sales team. So it's going to look like just any other ad. You're going to select an image or a video to promote the offer of the conversation with the sales team. Your headline might be chat in Messenger. Very clear expectations about what people are going to get when they click. And I'll just show you an example quickly of what that looks like. So I go into Facebook. I'm going to see something like this. So here's the brand. Hi, Decker. Please let us know how we can help you. And then I can say, is anyone available to chat? Boom, conversation with the sales team. Very, very easy way to help generate pipeline using Messenger ads. I mentioned earlier how you can import a specific list into Facebook, get a match rate of maybe 50% on that list, and target those people with ads. Okay, so that's a very direct route. But I want to highlight something else. So one of the biggest advantages you have with Facebook advertising instead of other social media platforms such as Twitter and LinkedIn is that Facebook just has so much data. And when you're dealing with huge user bases and tons of data analytics and machine learning, what it means is that you're able to do a lot of machine learning, a lot of predictive analytics, and rely on data more than anecdotes. But if you only have small numbers, then that really isn't that effective. So Facebook has been able to refine this much more simply by being bigger than other social media platforms have. And one of the ways that you utilize this is instead of importing a custom audience that is just the list itself, the CSV file of prospective customers, instead what you do is you take that list as a source, okay? So this is the lookalike source. And then what Facebook will do is it will use its technology to figure out who looks similar to those people. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Now, where I've seen this be particularly successful was importing a list of sales qualified leads. Okay, so sales qualified leads are defined differently at different business-to-business companies, but what you might do is you go into HubSpot, you go into Salesforce, you use whatever CRM tool that you have at your company, maybe it's Zoho, and export a list of every single sales qualified lead that you had. And those might be defined as people that had meaningful conversations with the sales team. Sometimes people define SQLs as more like what I would call sales qualified opportunities. So people that are going to make a purchase decision in the next 3 to 6 months. So those are people that are like hot leads, right? People that are actually potentials to become customers in the short term. So import that list. Hopefully it's a substantial size. And then what you can do is you can choose one of these lookalike percentages. So for example, if you went with 1%, a 1% lookalike consists of the people most similar to your lookalike audience source. Increasing the percentage creates a bigger, broader audience. Now, if you're trying to go big, then you might want to go with 10%. And you're going to say, okay, I want as many people as possible similar to all the sales qualified leads I've ever had at my company. So you can see the real power of Facebook advertising here is being able to hit all of these people with outbound marketing. You're not limited by how many people are searching on Google, how many people are searching on the app space. No, you're only limited by how many people are on Facebook, and that's a massive number. Okay, so you import that list, you find the lookalikes, and then you're able to target them, and you're also able to set geographic limitations on who those people are. Another thing that you might want to do, besides SQL lookalikes, is import a list of customers and say, here are the people that actually bought from us. Let's go find other people that look like people that bought from us in the past. Now, that's not going to work if you've changed strategies. Okay, maybe in the past you focused on SMBs and now you're going mid-market. Well, your lookalike audience is not really what you're going to want. Similar with retargeting, right? If a lot of the traffic to your website was not who you're targeting now, then retargeting is not going to be the greatest thing for you. The other problem you're going to have with importing customers is that the list may be too small, depending on how big your company is. You're dealing with a Fortune 500 company? Great. Import the list of customers, find your lookalikes. The challenge is getting the scale out of that. So that's why you need to go up funnel. Now, you could go further up funnel than SQLs, and you could say MQL. So import a list of all the marketing qualified leads. Problem here is that companies often have very poor definitions of marketing qualified leads. It's just anybody that downloaded some crappy white paper or something like that. There's nothing to say that that's actually a worthy candidate to potentially buy your product. Okay, so the last thing here is to not be limited by the number of customers that you currently have or the number of sales qualified leads that you have. Is you just go and you get a list, right? And I talked earlier about how you can scrape lists from LinkedIn, you can scrape lists from association websites, you could go buy a list from a broker. Tons of ways you can get a list. You can pay somebody on Fiverr, somebody overseas to compile a list for you, and then you import that and you say, go and find me as many people that look like this list as possible. And that really only makes sense if the list itself is not big enough or the match rate's not big enough. Then you need to expand it more by using lookalikes. And it's great because you can get some broad targeting here. And with broad targeting, you can have bigger impact and you can start to achieve some sort of market dominance. In some cases, you may not have a list. There's nothing to import. There's no lookalike audience. There's no custom audience at all. So in situations like this, what you're going to have to rely on is the native targeting in Facebook itself, which again is limited in the B2B space, but it's quite possible that whatever niche you're operating in, that you can get a big enough group. So I'm just doing an example here. So here we have the new lead generation campaign. Within that, I have the ad set, and then within the ad set, I'm setting the targeting parameters. So for example, I have the age 18 to 65. Now, my general thought on targeting is that I think demographics are overrated. So things like age and sex and often geography is irrelevant. So I tend to focus more on things like what you are, what your needs are, behavioral, motivational, or firmographic types of details. Now, that said, I think there are certain demographic targeting parameters that might be useful. So, for example, an 18-year-old, what is the probability that they're going to be making an executive decision at an industrial company with over 100 people? It's very, very low. So you could put in something there like 25 years or older. Yeah, okay, there's going to be somebody that runs a family business, or there's going to be some sort of entrepreneur who got venture capital at 21, but by and large, it's a small probability. Where you're going to want to play around with demographics is if you see some anomalies in perhaps past ads that you ran, where it's like, okay, there's way too many young people looking at this, and that's not generally what you want to see in business to business. Gender, I wouldn't play around with it too much. I mean, we know in certain spaces there's a heavy skew in one way or the other. So, for example, with entrepreneurs, so like small business entrepreneurs, e-commerce, etc., tends to be dominated by males. But does that mean you should only target males in your Facebook ads? Probably not, because there's still that 30% or whatever that are women, and there's no reason to exclude them just because there's a skew to one gender or the other. Now, where I would spend most of my time is looking at the detailed targeting. So here, putting in something like product manager, I can see, okay, Facebook's going to shoot me out other options. So product development manager, we're looking at about 24,000 people. We can see the different parameters that Facebook offers, the most important perhaps being job title. Now, you're going to be limited by job titles. You're also going to be limited by just how many people put their job title in. Job title may be outdated. So what you might want to think about is if you're going after like the C-suite, maybe their job title on Facebook is a bit outdated, a little bit junior. So you might want to go broader and say anybody director level, VP level, and above. I'm going to target all of those different job titles, not just the C-suite. That's kind of an adjustment that you would want to make with Facebook. Great thing is that the targeting will be updated on the right here. So you can see if you're targeting 1 million people, okay, maybe that's a little too broad. Let's get that down to around 30,000, something like that, which we could do with just the single job title, product development manager. Be careful. Monitor the geographies if it's important. If you're highly, highly specialized, then global might make more sense for you. If you're not as specialized and you're offering a more general solution, then you might want to limit the geography more. Okay, so another thing I want to point out is the beauty of Facebook is that they own WhatsApp, they own Instagram. And the one I want to call out here is being able to market on Instagram. Now, in order to be able to do that, you need to connect not just your Facebook account, but also your Instagram account. And you might say, oh, Instagram, how applicable is it in business to business? Well, you're marketing to humans, and humans use Instagram, so there's no reason that they shouldn't be getting the message there the same way they'll be getting on a Facebook and LinkedIn and direct mail and at work and through email and wherever, right? It's the same people. So connect your Instagram account, create a business account if you don't have one already. You should be there. And one of the main reasons you should be there is looking at this framework on how to change people's mind. It is the Reduce framework from the book The Catalyst, from the Wharton Business School's Dr. Jonah Berger. And one of the ways you convince people to change their mind is by using corroborating evidence. That means getting like multiple sources to endorse what you're selling. Now, this isn't a perfect mapping to what Dr. Jonah Berger is saying, but I think it creates the perception of corroborating evidence when you're able to hit your prospective buyers from multiple sources. So when they're seeing a message on Instagram, and they're seeing that same message on Facebook, and they're seeing it on LinkedIn, and you're hitting them from as many different angles as possible, the idea is that there's like this consensus forming in the world. The universe is telling me that this business-to-business seller is the answer to my problem. So it's a missed opportunity if you're not doing it already. Add in Instagram. Okay, I want to show you a few examples of ads that we'll evaluate in the next lecture.
Facebook native targeting for business to business. One of the biggest disadvantages of Facebook is that the targeting for business to business is not going to be as stellar as it is with LinkedIn. That's why in a lot of cases, what you're going to want to rely on are things like custom audiences. However, there are native targeting options that you may want to consider, especially to save time and effort in producing something like a custom list. So let's take a look at what those are. So we're going to see the native targeting options here under a section called Detailed Targeting. And we're going to hit Edit and hit Browse. We can see that there are 3 clusters of options here. The first is demographics, the second is interest, and the third is behaviors. The one that is going to be the most useful for us in business to business is actually demographics. However, most of the demographics are not going to be useful. There's actually just one section under here that is going to be incredibly useful for us, and it's called work. So education might occasionally be useful, but generally not. Financial, life events, parents' relationship, these are all more of business to consumer variables, but the work variables are going to be the most interesting for us. So employers is going to be incredibly useful. Industries is also going to be very useful. And perhaps even more so will be job titles. Now, one of the limitations with Facebook, in my experience, is that the targeting is often just much smaller. So, for example, going after a particular job title, I may find there are 10 times as many people on LinkedIn. But Facebook offers a number of different advertising options that aren't going to be available on LinkedIn. There are also ways to get ads cheaper using Facebook ads. So it's also just a great way to expand your reach beyond LinkedIn, and that's why you're going to want to consider these options. So my number one recommendation is to use demographics, and specifically the variables under work. Now, the second cluster of variables that we have here are interests. Now, interest gives us a lot of different interesting options, and we can even just type in any word we want to see if people are interested in that topic. The problem with interest, however, is that Facebook defines them so loosely that you may find that actually 30%, maybe 50%, it varies, the people you're targeting may not actually be interested in that topic. So Facebook is going to use very, very loose, a loose low bar to define whether somebody's interested in a topic. So for example, if they accidentally click something on their media feed, Facebook's going to assume that they're interested in that topic. In fact, it may be the opposite. It may be that they dislike it. So be very cautious with using the interest targeting. I think you can experiment with it because you can get much more precise. You could also, for example, use demographics as kind of your high-level definition of the target audience and then layer that with interest. I think that would be a safer approach, but I would just be very cautious because what Facebook is trying to compel you to do is to go broad. So back in the day when Facebook first started with advertising, it wasn't based on these loose definitions of interest. It was much more precise and there was much more transparency about who you're targeting. But now it's getting vaguer and vaguer because Facebook basically wants you to go broader and broader, and that's not necessarily in your best interest, no pun intended. Now, the last cluster of variables that we have here is behaviors, which may also be useful, but probably not as often as the work variables under demographics. So we have anniversary, probably not that important for business to business. Consumer classification, perhaps not that important again for business to business. Digital activities might be important. So new active businesses, often one of the most important elements in business to business marketing is the customer journey. And often that customer journey starts with some sort of trigger event. So trigger events are going to be something like incorporating your business, setting up your business, perhaps getting a new website. So this could actually be very useful because someone that is a new active business within the last 6 months may be in market for buying a bunch of things that are going to be relevant to new active businesses. So we have digital activities with a capital A, but there's also the section of digital activities with a lowercase a, where we can target people based on operating systems. So that might be useful. We also see Facebook page admins, so that could be useful as well. And it gets more granular. So for example, food and restaurant page admins, community and club page admins. So if you're in the restaurant business, this would be useful. If you're in the health and beauty business, this might be relevant. Retail page admins, sports page, travel and tourism page admins. Again, useful information from a business to business perspective. Internet browser use, this could be useful. So for example, if you're selling a Chrome plugin, then it's going to be useful to target people that are actually using Chrome. That will be helpful. You're targeting small business owners, that could be useful. Technology early adopters could be useful. Expats, probably more useful from the perspective of business to consumer. A lot of these variables are going to be important sometimes with business to business as well as business to consumer. So mobile device user. And under more categories, another thing that may be used in niche cases would be marketing to people that are marketing API developers. So those are the native targeting options available to you in business-to-business marketing. I encourage you to experiment, and I also encourage you to be very cautious because what you may find is that you're getting tons of clicks or tons of video views. A lot of optimistic results may be coming in, but when you actually look deeper into the funnel, you may find those people are not requesting demos, they're not becoming paying customers. And a lot of that may be a function of Facebook simply going too broad with who they're targeting, and they may not actually be a relevant audience. So be very careful with and take with a grain of salt the data that are coming in from the results of your campaigns.
Here are some examples of bottom of funnel lead generation ads. This is straight to the sales conversation essentially.
And what these demonstrate is very offer-centric messaging. Now, lots of things I want to call out here. One, Facebook is stricter than other platforms when it comes to your advertisements. So you can see, for example, I was able to get a lot of text in the image. Often you can't do that with Facebook. It has very strict limitations on how much text you can embed because they want more image-centric images rather than text-centric images. Facebook's also very strict when you're marketing in certain industries. So, for example, my brother was running advertisements in the healthcare space and with naturopathic medicine. So even in naturopathic medicine, it can be very difficult to get your ads approved. So don't go in with the expectation that, okay, I've made the perfect ad, I've got the great design, I got the best copywriting, and then we're ready to go to town. Can't do that. So in some of the ads that I ran, for example, I would abbreviate SAS as capital S, 2 lowercase a's, and then a capital S. Sometimes you can't do that. What Facebook's going to force you to do is all capitals because it doesn't like weird capitalizations, even though that is kind of the industry standard. Now, I was able to get away with it in some instances, so it's not always consistent in what does and does not get approved. I'm not trying to cheat the system or anything like that, but that's just how their algorithms work. Now, the other thing I want to call out is that when you're doing the lead gen, you have to choose from among their set options for the kind of the offer or the call to action. So here I have get quote, and here I have get offer. You may not have something that's perfect for your situation, but what I would say is if you're being charged based on the number of people that are engaging or clicking, you might want to go with a harder sounding offer, like get quote. Whereas if you're paying per impression, then your call to action can be a little more easy, lower level commitment, something like learn more. It all depends on what you're paying for, how you're being charged. So this is what a typical lead generation ad will look like. It just has a bunch of text up here, and you hit see more. As far as I know, Facebook still allows more text than you can get in LinkedIn lead gen ads. So you can put in a lot of things here. A lot of people will put like bullet points and check marks. You can put in emoticons if you want. Even in business to business, there's a lot of that kind of creative stuff happening because business to business marketing, you still need to break things up. And one of the easiest ways to break things up is using little images. And images in text are things like emoticons, bullets, etc. Now, in this case, I'm starting with a question. You need help marketing your product, your SaaS product. Same thing over here. You can do that. There's all sorts of copywriting frameworks you can use. One of my favorite is the PASS formula. So you start with the P, which is the problem, and then you agitate the problem. You basically say the problem's going to get worse because of X, Y, and Z, and then you present your offer as the solution. Notice I said offer there, not product. So your offer is your consultation, your free trial, your demo. Position the offer as the hero rather than your product in a lot of cases. And what you're going to do is you're going to be able to increase the conversion rate because people are going to take you up on the offer. They're not ready to buy, but they're ready to have the consultation, for example. Now, what I did here was I tested 2 different offers. One was Advanced SaaS Marketing Consultant free quote. So it's asking for a price quote, which is a pretty aggressive, you're almost ready to hire me type of thing. And then what I did on here was I said free advanced SaaS marketing consultation. So here I'm promoting consultation, here I'm promoting a price quote, and then you can get the offer, you can get the quote, and then you're immediately brought to a form. What I am not doing, which a lot of business-to-business marketers will recommend or will do, is sending people to my landing page. I don't need a landing page. A lot of business-to-business marketing, you don't even need a website. All you need is an advertisement. Because I'm going to generate leads from this advertisement. I'm going to be able to email that person to get them to schedule using my Calendly link, or I could put the Calendly link right here if I wanted to, and then suddenly have a booking on my calendar to talk to a potential new client. Now, that's how you could market a business-to-business service. Some of you may be familiar with these already. These are the 3 major things that you want to test. But I want to clarify something because I've heard some pretty prominent people out there mention that these are the only 3 things, major things that you need to test when you're doing social media marketing. That's not true. What these are is the 3 things you need to test when you're doing direct response marketing. Now, direct response marketing is not the only type of marketing you should be doing, because the most advanced marketers understand that you need to do direct response marketing, but you also need to do marketing that is not direct response, that's more focused on education and awareness. And a proper Facebook advertising campaign is going to do both, and it's going to do them integrate it within Facebook itself and integrate it with other channels, such as LinkedIn. So that said, these are the three things you want to test when you're doing direct response style advertising, which is typically what you are going to start with when you do business-to-business Facebook ads by using the lead generation objective. But don't assume that these are the three ways that you're going to test all the ads, okay? So direct response, what you want to test is the list. So your list is, generally speaking, your targeting. So it's the list that you import, it's the lookalike targeting, it's the Facebook targeting, it's are we going after product managers or product directors, it's that type of stuff, okay? Most marketers know that. They know they need to test who the audience is. Now the second thing you need to test that most marketers are aware of is the creatives. What image are we using? What's the copy we're using? What's the positioning that we have in the headline? Are we going to go with a dramatic kind of let's get a lot of attention, or are we going to go with something a little more straightforward and logical? Okay, a lot of creative testing going out there in the world. Now the third thing is where there isn't a lot of experimentation, but where you can get the biggest lift in your direct response marketing, which is the offer. And positioning your offer as a hero. Earlier I mentioned the consultation and the price quote. Those are examples of offers, and not enough Facebook advertisers are going to spend time properly selling the offer itself and experimenting with what that offer is. So I'm going to go into some detail on that. Sell a compelling offer. Okay, so this is an example of where initially this was just a campaign promoting a free demo, a demo request, kind of your standard business-to-business offer. But what we did was we changed it up a bit, and we started looking at different types of offers. So for example, here, the offer is a free 3-month kiosk test drive. So have you ever heard of software or hardware being marketed as a test drive? No, you usually see that in consumer when you're selling a car. So there's a case where we're coming up with a compelling offer and using unique language. So it's not just a masked sales conversation. And the purpose of the offer is to prove the return on investment of self-ordering at one of your restaurants. So it's a very specific offer that you can take us up on. Now, the second example here, and there's a lot of debate on this happening right now in the LinkedIn space, is promoting not just the offer of a demo or a test drive or whatever, but some sort of special incentive that is like a second offer. And that might be a $100 Amazon gift card. Now, I've seen this be extremely effective, basically saying that we respect your time and we're going to compensate you for your time by paying you to attend a demo of our product. Now, it's not going to work in all cases. It's not going to work if people don't believe it, or it's not going to work if it's going to get filtered in spam filters, but it is an offer that is worth testing in your case. Will people be willing? Will a targeted group of people? Now, you don't want to broadcast this to everybody, because if you broadcast it to everybody, who's going to not want $100? But if you're only targeting VPs at certain companies and you're paying them $200 to talk to your salespeople, then it's definitely worth it, and it's been extremely effective at generating business-to-business pipeline revenue. So experiment more with your offers, get more creative, get more bold. Don't just go with what all your competitors are going with in terms of describing what the offer is. I'm going to show you a couple other examples. So this is not just me. I'm not just making stuff up that you bribe people to talk to your salespeople. We have OpenRise here. And OpenRise is experimenting with two different offers. One is a free Amazon gift card, and the other is getting these Bose speakers. Interesting. And look at the imagery here. There's no image of the product here. The image is the offer. It's the special incentive. It's an image of an Amazon gift card, an image of Bose. So there's a special benefit that comes out of this, which is that you're able to disarm people, right? When people have their spidey senses, right? They know when there's a sales conversation happening. So they're going to see, oh, it's an advertisement. They're going to sell this product. But when you lead with a gift, this Amazon gift card, and we know from the laws of persuasion, principles of persuasion from Dr. Cialdini, that giving gifts is an extremely effective tool in marketing and sales, that people are very open and receptive. And here we're offering a gift, a speaker, or Amazon gift card, so that's something you can experiment with to segue into something like a demo. Now, where I was able to prove this empirically years ago was I was doing this research study to help a client figure out how to improve their marketing and their profitability. And I sent 2 emails out to the customers. One was appealing to their selflessness. Give us, please help us be better, something like that, in one email. And then it was kind of like I think I did a survey or interviews, maybe some combination of that. It was a long time ago. And the other subject line was basically saying, you're going to get a $50 Starbucks gift card. And guess which one outperformed? The gift card, right? I'm paying people for their time, and so they're willing to give me something in return. When you lead with, give me something, they're going to be less receptive. So definitely something worth considering.